I am joined by Adam Scherer. We are brought to you by PrizePicks. We are about to take a look at a 9-game slate, which feels just massive for what we've had as of late. We just haven't been getting these big slates. Not that 9 is huge, but I'm happy to have something big, a lot to talk about. We don't really have to dig into any of the garbage on a 9-game slate, and that is much more fun. So hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Adam, how are you? I know you feel probably quite a bit better today than you normally do.
Yeah, I'm good. Yesterday went well. Won the $200 3 max on DraftKings, cashed some other high stakes single entry stuff. So it was a good night. And it's always fun when you win with a lineup that like you weren't even sweating either, because I knew I had Ben Simmons in it, and I was like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. And then Jalen Williams, both Jalen Williams went nuts. I only had one of them, but yeah, it was nice to just look back at the end of the night. Like I was just sweating my like higher stake stuff, being like, oh shit, I'm gonna break even if these fall out of the money. And then it's like, oh cool, I have Jalen Williams 10x in 3/4, and I might win this tournament.
Before the late swaps, I had a really nice chunk of Jalen Williams, and then we got some value with Naz Reid, and all of a sudden it was just like, well, I guess I'm not going to play Jalen Williams. I've got Anthony Davis and Nikola Jokic, one of which went well, the other one did not, but I ended up with precisely 0 Jalen Williams, so that was another fine swap. Much rather have Naz Reid.
Did you see the video I sent you of Anthony Davis?
I did see that video. Not entirely sure I get it. He seemed a bit grumpy.
Yeah, it really, really bizarre. Like, not like I always think it's dumb when you try and read into like random, videos like that. But at the same time, like that was a really, really weird reaction.
Could you imagine, like, just put aside those two, just can you imagine basically not watching a friend of yours reach like their career pinnacle in front of you and be what looks like, honestly, the only person in the entire arena that doesn't seem to give a shit?
Yeah, I would bet a lot that at least of people in the arena over like 3 years of age, Anthony Davis was the only person sitting down when that ball went in.
Well, yeah, unless you have no ability to stand,
right,
then I think you are on your feet. It's so weird. So weird. And like, I don't have a good reason to figure out what it is.
To me, the most likely thing, and I saw it brought up a lot on Twitter, like to me, my most likely guess is that he was pissed off he wasn't in the game. But still, to like let that basically ruin the moment for you is weird. Like, it's go stand next to your coach and just cuss him out while you're, cheering for LeBron. But like, I don't know, it's weird. I have no idea what to make of it.
If you tell me that Russ is sitting down, I'm like, okay, he's a different person. Right. But it's not like AD's been this like ornery guy over his career. Like he's just not. Did they tell him before the game started that they were looking to move him at the deadline?
Right. Or did LeBron tell him that he's leaving in the offseason? Like family stuff. I mean, that's literally like all I can think of is stuff like that.
Like it's like he got broken up with.
Yeah. And people in chat are saying they lost. He wanted to win. This happened in the third quarter.
I don't think he was writing it off just yet.
Yeah.
The dude's 7 feet tall, can clearly see over everybody that's in front of him, and went behind the rest of everybody to sit down on the bench while LeBron broke the all-time scoring record. Yeah, I certainly didn't see it coming. Like it makes.
There's a video too.
Like, I don't even have like words. There is no logical explanation for it. I don't even have a good guess.
Right. Well, and there's a video too, which like I wouldn't think anything of if we didn't have the one from the floor. But there's a video of Bronny and LeBron in the locker room, like where Bronny's showing LeBron the video that he got, and LeBron's like having a great time and laughing. And you can see Anthony Davis like at his locker in the corner, just like getting dressed and paying like no attention to them in what you would think is just like a really cool moment.
I mean, they are unequivocally going out to like party aggressively after that game.
Oh yeah, LeBron said it in the presser, which was also,
he's basically, I'm not going to be there for the Milwaukee game because I'm going to need to dry out, which is great.
Wait, did he actually say that?
Not in those words. I mean,
I saw the part about
sort of.
I saw the wine and Lobos and not going to sleep part. I didn't know if he specifically said the Milwaukee part too.
I mean, it was implied, but
he's
probably not going to make that one.
Yeah.
Hopefully he can get Bronny a couple cocktails last night. He deserves it.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. The whole thing is just weird.
I don't know how to I don't know how to wrap my head around it, but now
Like
it's
I'm just
official.
expecting it's like I'm just expecting news to come out where either like, but I don't even know what, like they're trading Anthony Davis or
Yeah,
like
I'd want to
I
get
have no
traded.
idea. What'd you say?
I'd want to get traded.
Right. Yeah.
At least now it's official, even though it was already official before. The greatest of all time is now officially the greatest of all time.
Yep.
And I'm paraphrasing your tweet there.
So I did specifically use best in my tweet because I think it's very reasonable to argue that Jordan is the greatest if you were just talking like accomplishments, what they did in their era, blah, blah, blah. Best, sure. I don't think there's any argument in the world that it's not LeBron.
It's the greatest career. It's the greatest career.
I don't have any issue with that, but if you want to argue others, I think you can at least have the conversation.
Oh no, we're saying the same thing. Like it's just there's too much volume for him. There's too much extra playing time for him. It's the best career. You know, if you want to tell me it's Bill Russell, I'm fine with that. But take your Michael Jordan rings argument and shove it. As far as I'm concerned, you ready to talk about this?
Clearly the better player. No, like not remotely close.
No. Higher peak, if you want to say that, go for it. I don't know. I don't even know if that's true, but if that's the one you want,
yeah,
go for it there. The GOAT, the greatest of all time. Greatest of all time. I think he's one of the four heads on a NBA Mount Rushmore.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
I think it's Russell, Kareem, LeBron, and MJ.
Yeah.
And like I don't think there's much argument there. I don't know who. To me, there's no obvious person that should be taken out there. I think you check off every one of the main eras of the history of the NBA.
Yeah, I can't think of I don't know who you would replace or who would replace.
And whatever dopes are going to say that it should be like Kobe or something.
Right.
Please don't even bother with this. I don't know. I really don't know. I guess you can make some sort of case for somebody like Tim Duncan. It's never going to happen, but I would at least listen to something like that.
We got a former D1 player in chat that doesn't know ball.
Where do we got this one at?
John P said, as someone who played D1 basketball, yes, Jordan clearly the better player.
Sure. You ready?
I'd rather, yeah, I guess.
I love it. The Detroit Pistons are 12.5-point underdogs in Cleveland. 222 total for Detroit. No one is getting any ownership for today. And it doesn't really seem like anybody should for this team. They are huge underdogs against a really good defensive team. They don't really have a great rotation at this point. Some ownership coming into Beef Stew and Jalen Duren. Sure, if you want. My recommendation is to largely avoid the Detroit Pistons today.
Yeah, a brutal spot, 13-point dogs on the road. Very, very good defensive team as well. It makes it really difficult to really like anything here. Like you said, 5K Jalen Duren certainly gives you plenty of upside. Difficult matchup, but if he does get 30 minutes or so, he's got a very good ceiling. Jaden Ivey's price tag came down to 5,500. Stewart's at 5,100. They both, I think, are in that same vein where they have nice ceilings, but I think Duren would be the one I get to first. Realistically, I don't anticipate prioritizing anything from a team with a 105 implied total going up against Cleveland in Cleveland.
We're going to keep it moving because there's just better spots to talk about. Cleveland Cavaliers, next one up. We once again saw no Kevin Love. Ricky Rubio is back for this one. Teams are, like 10 to 15% ownership coming into Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. I don't see really any surprises there. I don't really see any priorities coming from those four guys in Cleveland, but they seem like out of that group, you could probably work one into every lineup you make and not feel all that bad. I just don't know how you choose which one.
Yeah, it's similar to how they looked against Washington the other day, and I don't even remember how that went in terms of if any of them did well. But like Mitchell, Mobley, Allen, Garland, they're all just fairly priced. It's kind of weird that Garland's getting like 8% ownership while the rest are getting 12 to 15. I kind of get it just because Mitchell is only $200 more expensive and does project a little bit better. But all four of those guys, I think, are pretty much correctly owned. They all look like good plays. It's certainly a good matchup. There's not one that stands out, though. When you consider positions, when you consider price tags, they all just look about the same.
Yeah, I don't like any one of those guys is totally cool with me. Right now, I have like 7% of Mitchell and Allen. I don't really love them anyway. I think there are infinitely better spots than this, but one of those main four guys for Cleveland is probably going to beat up on the Pistons pretty good today.
Agreed.
Good luck figuring out which one it is. But again, there are better spots. We'll keep it moving. The Charlotte Hornets are 4.5-point dogs in Washington, 235 total. Hornets still without Kelly Oubre and Cody Martin. We've got 17% ownership coming into Mason Plumlee. We could have that discussion. Kind of weird to me. LaMelo Ball is at 10%. His minutes have been massive, but the price is also pretty big. I don't have a ton of interest here in Charlotte. If you want to roll the dice on the Mark Williams backup center run, by all means, on a 9-game slate, that just feels incorrect. Let's start with Plumlee. Why 17% ownership to Mason Plumlee today?
I mean, it's a reasonable price tag. It's a good enough matchup. But yeah, the ownership is weird just knowing that it's a 9-game slate. You're going to have plenty of good center options. I mean, even in the games we just talked about, you have 8% ownership coming to Jalen Duren at 5K. If he's actually going to be half the ownership of Plumlee, give me some of that. You have, Jared Allen pulling similar ownership. I think he's very comparable. So, I don't have an issue with Plumlee. He's a good point per minute guy. He's likely giving you around 30 minutes. It's just weird that he's getting as much as he is. It seems like he probably should be closer to 10.
Right. There's going to be 10 versions of him in a $3,000 range. And I don't know how you pick. How are you picking Mason Plumlee relative to salary over Draymond Green, Jakob Poeltl, Robert Williams, Precious Achiuwa, Walker Kessler, Zubats, Daniel Gafford? You want to say Jabari Smith, sure, Beef Stew, Duren, this whole Jared Allen, Rudy Gobert. I mean, we're just loaded with very similar, low 30s fantasy point projection guys. I can't imagine just picking one and rolling with it. So I don't love Plumlee. I think it's easy to get away there. I also don't really love anything here for Charlotte.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, LaMelo, we know, gives you a very nice ceiling. He's 10-1, so that price tag came up a little bit. Point guard only, so, it makes it a little bit more difficult to get to him as well. I think he's the other option here that I would get to, really at all, in addition to Plumlee. You mentioned, Mark Williams at 3,300. Probably don't need to go that route on a 9-game slate, but it's there if you want it. And then you just hope it's not the Nick Richards game. But Plumlee, I think, is the easiest guy to get to. LaMelo, certainly like getting there when I can. But other than that, nothing that looks particularly good at all.
Yeah, I think we're on the exact same page here, especially with Hayward playing these increased minutes. It just doesn't look great to me. Now we go to your Washington Wizards, a team that we can't really talk about right now, but if everybody's in, it's really easy to talk about. You probably don't like anything. Q tag on Bradley Beal, Q tag on Kyle Kuzma. We had both guys out this past Monday. Beal's been out for 2 straight. Kuzma basically has been out for 2 straight. We're getting Daniel Gafford in that starting lineup. There's no ownership here. 5% to Gafford at 5,400. I'd rather take a shot on $5,400 Daniel Gafford at low ownership than Mason Plumlee at ownership today. But that's really all we're talking about here. Pivots. Now, if these guys end up being out, fire up your Denny Obvious potentially. Fire up your Corey Kisperts, unfortunately. But for right now, with the Q tags, assuming everybody's in, there's not much here.
Yeah, assuming everybody's in, not much to see here. If Kuzma's out and Beal is in and you want to get to some $7,400 Beal, sure, but keep in mind there's a good chance he's playing 30 minutes. Porzingis at 9,600 especially if Kuzma and Beal are out, but if even one of them is out, he starts to look interesting. It is certainly a good matchup. He has power forward eligibility. He's about a 1.3 fantasy point per minute guy. Should give you 33 to 34 minutes, assuming they don't get blown out like they did last game. But that price tag has come up as well. So I'm with you. If everybody's in, there's not really much here outside of just randomly landing on these guys in large field tournaments. If you start getting guys ruled out, it certainly starts to look a little bit more interesting.
I got nothing else for Washington. It's the first 2 games are just not good DFS spots, but we are about to get into a couple really, really big time spots. Schedule for the rest of the day. We've got the No House Advantage NFL show coming up at 3:30. The NBA Deeper Dive will be at 5. Adam will be back for that one. I think you get the boss man, Alex Baker, too. NBA Live
in a while.
Yeah, so Awesemo is going to be on that one, hosting it with Adam. NBA Live Before Lock coming up at 6. And then you'll get PGA Live Before Lock coming up at 8 p.m. Don't be afraid to hit that like button. To the 350 viewers here, just 57 likes, not nearly enough for right now. Let's run that bad boy up. The Philadelphia 76ers, 4.5-point dogs in Boston, 228 total. For Philly, it's the perpetual Q tag on Joel Embiid. Everybody is healthy here for Philly. There's essentially no ownership coming in. I think Tobias Harris might be the best Philly play. I desperately want to watch this game. If you want to play Joel Embiid, by all means. I don't have a ton that I want to get from the Sixers.
Yeah, neither do I. You mentioned Harris, and I kind of did a double take because I assumed that meant one of Embiid or Harden was out. But I mean, he is down to 5,600, so I get it. But in the context of he has a 6% chance of being optimal, he's getting 7% ownership. That's more ownership than anybody else on this team. So I can see how he just sort of falls into lineups. But certainly, if you get to Embiid, if you get the Harden, fine. But tough matchup, plenty of good plays on this slate. Should be a good game to watch. I think it's difficult to find a lot of DFS value, though.
Yeah, I wish I had more to add here for Philly, but I don't. Is today a day that I think PJ Tucker could play 30 minutes? Yes. Does that matter at all today? No.
Yeah, I was gonna say, does that matter? Is he, unless they give PJ Tucker 2 overtimes and everybody else plays regulation, I don't think I care.
Well, then we go to Boston. This one's a little bit different, at least to me. Everybody that's normally available is available for the Celtics, including Jaylen Brown being back after missing the most recent game. Time Lord is in. Luke Cornett is in. 7% ownership going to Jaylen Brown at 8,700. I actually think he's a little underrepresented today. I find the Jason Tatum price hard to get to. The Derek White minutes are sturdy, but he's 6,200 now. I'd be happy to take $6,100 Time Lord over Mason Plumlee for today if you need to get away from ownership, but I'm going to say that for every team. I like Jaylen Brown quite a bit at 8,700, though, given that price tag and given that position.
Yeah, the positions, the price tag, the lack of ownership, all of that looks appealing. I'm with you as far as it being difficult to get to Tatum now that we do have Brown expected back. Same sort of thing. If we were to get like the midday downgrade on Brown, then yeah, Jason Tatum starts to look good. But assuming Jaylen Brown's in, you just have a really difficult price tag to get to on Tatum. Whereas Brown should give you 35, 36 minutes at a much more reasonable 8,700. I'm with you on Robert Williams. I prefer Mason Plumlee in terms of just like which guy would I rather have in a lineup. But if I'm going to get 1, 2, 3% ownership on Robert Williams and 15 to 17 on Plumlee, that's a very, very good, at the very least, it's a very good large field pivot where, you can say, all right, well, I have, some of the best plays on the slate, some of the highest owned guys in 5, 6 spots. Let's turn Plumlee into Williams here to be different. That's going to be a very good approach.
Is there anything else we should be looking at here? Because it just feels like all of these prices are a couple $100 too high.
Yeah, it's just tough. Like you saw Derek White's price tag come up. Brogdon's still sitting at 6,300, but with Brown back, I don't really have any confidence in those minutes for that price tag at least. Horford is whatever at 4,700. It's just pretty much correct pricing across the board.
Yeah. Well, we've been zipping through these first 3 games. I think we're going to stop zipping when we get to the opposite side of this one. The Indiana Pacers are 6.5-point dogs in Miami, 223 total. This is an Indiana team that is essentially at full strength. There's a Q tag on Chris Duarte. That really doesn't matter. We don't really have any ownership coming into anybody from Indiana. I'd be happy to get to Aaron Nesmith as a value option because apparently that's the thing you do now with Halliburton back. But I don't have much that I would want to get to from the Pacers. Nobody really stands out. We're going to wait to talk about how a team is everybody's a good play when we get to Miami. But what do you like for the Pacers?
Not a lot. Tough spot against Miami. Healthy team again. 9,500 Halliburton certainly gives you upside, but there's plenty of that. Like I'd rather get to LaMelo if I can for 600 more. Healed at 6,600. Shooting guard, small forward. Turner at 7,800. Like these are just correct price tags in a tough matchup. There's nothing that looks that appealing.
It's a shame too. I would have liked to get to Indiana, and I like the idea of running them back because now we could actually talk about the Miami Heat. This is the first spot of the night. We're going to talk about 3 separate teams that are basically just jam as many guys as you can from the team into your lineup and feel good about it. And the Heat are that team. We have no Kyle Lowry, no Victor Oladipo, still no Duncan Robinson, no Nikola Jovic, no Omer Yurtseven. Apparently Orlando Robinson is back. I didn't know that was going to be a thing, but yeah, I don't know. I guess it is.
No Dwayne Dedmon, keep that in mind.
Yes, Dwayne Dedmon is now, I guess, technically a Spur, but more likely to be a nothing for the rest of the year. So they basically had this rotation. They used Dedmon, but I just assume Dedmon becomes Orlando Robinson. They played 8 guys on Saturday, this exact same rotation, and we are getting huge ownership to Gabe Vincent at 41%, Jimmy Butler's at 27, Tyler Hero's at 29. For reasons that don't make any sense to me, Bam is 12, Haywood Highsmith is almost 20, Max Strus is almost 20, Caleb Martin is only 7, which doesn't make a ton of sense to me either. Everybody that I named, Bam, Hero, Vincent, Butler, Martin, Highsmith, and Strus, you should be getting to pretty sizably in lineups. Who is your favorite Miami Heat play for today?
Probably Hero.
Okay.
Point guard, shooting guard, only 7,500. Obviously, he's burned us a lot recently, but really good matchup here. Should play a lot of minutes. 29% ownership, 24% chance of being optimal. That all looks fine. Vincent at 4,300 is pulling the most ownership. That's clearly just a function of there being less alternatives around 4,300 than around 7,500. But, in terms of who am I going to feel the best about having, it's Hero, but certainly want to get the Gabe Vincent as well at 4,300, want to get the Butler. Bam looks great. It's just a matter of, being center only, and he is priced up a bit. Strus, Highsmith, this team as a whole just looks fantastic, like you said. But I think Hero, Vincent, Butler end up being my 3 highest owned guys, probably.
Did Chandre really say that Steph could get the scoring title by the time he's done? He's not even going to be in
my eyes just black out at his name.
Ballpark. That is one of the worst takes. For someone that has really bad takes all the time, that one is really, really bad. I mean, we're talking about a guy that didn't immediately come into the NBA out of high school. Right away, you're losing a couple of years. This is a guy that had multiple injury issues for his first couple of years.
Coming towards the end of his career, what his relative ceiling is. Somebody, I said somebody's gonna be better than LeBron in 20 years, just kind of how things work. And somebody said Luka. It's not gonna be Luka, but at least Luka's young enough that it could be Luka.
Steph is 17,000 points behind LeBron. What are we talking about here? Okay, how many Miami Heat guys are you willing to play together today? Is that 4?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to hard cap it at 3. I think a lot of times it's just going to end up being 3 because you still are going to have a lot of other good plays on the slate. But, you have a ton of minutes to go around here. Somebody in chat asked if Caleb Martin's going under-owned at 7%. I wouldn't say under-owned. We have him with a 5 to 6% chance of being optimal because he is up to 4,800. I do think he's a very interesting way just to get a low-owned piece of Miami because, everybody's going to be going to Miami today. Mostly it's going to be to those same guys. It's not crazy to say all right, well, I'm going to differentiate in this lineup by playing Caleb Martin. Hope that you get that random big Caleb Martin game at the expense of some of these other guys that everybody else is playing. But in terms of chances of success versus ownership, I wouldn't say under-owned, just low-owned.
Ivan says, you got to factor in that LeBron came into the league out of high school. Kareem went to college for 4 years. By the way, LeBron just beat Kareem in less regular season games. Just put that one out there. And in case we're not aware yet, he's not retiring today either. And he might be right now one of the 5 best players in the NBA. So I don't think he's done, oddly enough. I don't think he's done. Are you surprised? This is just more of a question for me because I'm getting a ton. Are you surprised that only 12% of the people are going to Bam Adebayo right now, or is that just an $8,900 price tag thing?
I think it's an $8,900 center thing.
Okay, that's fair. I'm getting a ton here. A bit of a rate bump without those 2 guys out on the floor. And the fact that it's a pace up spot against a bad Indiana team. I like Bam in GPPs the most of anybody here, but you're obviously paying up to be a little bit more contrarian.
Yeah, you just run into the issue of if you get a 45, 46, fantasy point game, 50 even fantasy point game from Bam, there's a real risk that you end up with a couple of centers that are cheaper, giving you similar production. Sort of I guess it's not a perfect example because Vooch was more expensive, but sort of like how Joval kind of the inverse example of last night. Is kind of the risk with Bam. Last night you had Joval at 5,700, give you a great fantasy game, 37 DraftKings points. Totally useless because you had Jokic and Vooch at his position just go nuts. It's kind of the inverse here with Bam, where let's say he goes for 50-52. If you have, one of those 6K guys give you the 42 fantasy point game, and there's plenty of them that can do it, then you're, in trouble. So that's why the ownership's low. That's why the optimal percentage is low. But I'm with you as far as, he's obviously one of the best players on this team and he's not getting ownership or not getting a lot of ownership.
Yeah, he's the guy that I'm getting to pretty aggressively over the field in terms of like a positive leverage play for me. Hero, I agree, is the answer, though, the guy that I want the most of. Pulling some ownership, but I'd like to get even more here. I think Butler is kind of properly owned. The fact that he's just power forward really becomes a limiting factor for Jimmy, just because it's the worst. I'm guessing you would agree with me here. Power forward only is the worst designation you can have. Because you get overlapped by guys that also have power forward center that are just like inevitably better point per minute guys as in terms of like volume.
Yeah. So it's not inherently the worst. It's just that typically if you're a power forward that doesn't have, assuming that the positions are assigned correctly, you are probably a worse point per minute guy than the power forward / center guys. But it's not inherently the worst position to have. It's center. Like if you take the same player and make him a power forward or you make him a center, it's worse for him to be a center.
Yeah, because there's just less places to be entered. You lose one additional spot to be entered into that lineup. But just looking at power forward only, I feel like it's so easy to just get lost in the shuffle there.
Yeah, like it's not as big a deal for somebody like Butler because he's still, like a 1.2 fantasy point per minute guy. But the thing is, like, and I mean, it's not a great example because like these guys are center only, but Jared Allen and Mason Plumlee give you pretty similar point per minute production to Jimmy Butler.
Right.
Again, they're not the best examples, but you're going to have centers that do also have power forward eligibility. Although, typically the power forward / center guys aren't as good as the center guys on a per minute basis. Again, assuming that they've assigned positions correctly.
I love that it's a Haywood Highsmith day.
I don't. I hate those.
All told, summary information here for this one. Play all things Miami. Like there's no wrong answer for the main 7 guys on this team. Everything is right to a degree. Don't feel bad. Any name you see that isn't Orlando Robinson or Udonis Haslem, or maybe they unlock Jamari Bouye or whoever the hell they signed yesterday on a 10-day who could play, I guess.
Yeah, to me, that was the unofficial start of March NBA.
On February 8th.
Yep.
It is the deadline coming up. Anyway, the reason they did that is they couldn't afford to sign 10-day contracts until they got rid of the Dedmon deal. So that's why they happened in succession. If they did that, it would have been a real problem for them to get back under the tax. So that's why you saw those happen in conjunction. Anything else for Miami?
Nope.
All righty then, let's talk about PrizePicks. They are the presenting sponsor of this show. First and foremost, you should head to our Odds Shopper channel and watch me give my 5 favorite PrizePicks plays. This is a video that's going to be coming out Monday through Friday. Probably not getting one tomorrow, but you might. It's up in the air right now. I got some stuff going on in the morning. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it, but watch every day. Great video. Went 3-1 yesterday. What you're doing is picking player props. You're taking over-unders. And if you can put 5 together on one card, you'll net up to 10x your entry fee. If you can hit 6 on one card, you'll get 25x your entry fee. And you can do this across sports. NBA, NHL, NFL, college basketball, soccer, PGA tennis, MMA, all sorts of different options for you. And obviously, we're going to focus more on the NBA side of it. So I'm going to give Adam a few points props for today. We're going to see how he feels. And I'm going to hit you with a couple of the ones that I'm looking at the most. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
I know we haven't talked about him yet, but we are going to get there in a bit. Where is he hiding? Jordan Poole. I know we didn't get there yet, but this is one of my favorites. Over under 23.5 real points.
That is not the page I needed to be on. You said 23.5?
Correct.
Over.
Yeah, I have that by a pretty sizable over. By the way, Des, no one ever beat Mike once they got there. So we just throw out all the ones where he didn't get there. Those are, we ignore the fact that LeBron failed in multiple seasons because he won when he got there. That's the argument? Okay. Let's go to the next one. Another guy that we haven't talked about yet that I am excited to talk about. It's a guy that I was very heavy on 2 nights ago, and he has the same matchup today that he did before. How do you feel about Alperen Şengün over under 16.5 points?
Over. Oh, wow. Easy over?
I agree. It is an easy over. That's why it's part of my PrizePicks video, and it has already been placed.
We have him at 17.6, but only in 30 minutes.
He's going to play. He played. He's 33 is a, pretty much where you should be. Got 36 on Monday too. Bad beat on the Alperen Şengün loss on Monday. 3 extra minutes and still didn't get it. All right, let's finish it off. One more. Let's do somebody that we actually have talked about at this point. Let's go to Bam Adebayo because I am a big fan and I think I'm a little heavy on him. Over under 21.5 points.
Slight over. We have it at 21.8, but we also only have him 33.5 minutes. I think expecting 35, 36, 37.
I mean, this is a guy that's playing 36 minutes a game every night now.
Right. Yeah. And like, it wouldn't be surprising if you get a couple extra tonight. So again, I think the minutes, they're a little bit low and it's still giving him the over. So I would go over.
Most recent 8 games, 35, 35, 37, 37, 36, 37, 38, 36. Yeah. That dude is playing 36 minutes today shorthanded unless this game goes very, very wrong. Anyway, take everything that we just told you to, guys, because our picks are fantastic. Go check out PrizePicks. I didn't even tell you the best part. Link in the description. Sign up. You'll get 1 free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum and up to $1,000 on an instant match deposit bonus. The San Antonio Spurs, 10.5-point dogs in Toronto, 234 total. There's not a lot to talk about here, and that's probably a good thing. I hate this. I'm really sick and tired of the San Antonio team. They are going to be an absolute disaster in March and April. I am not looking forward to this one at all. Q tag on Trey Jones, Q tag on Keldon Johnson, doubtful tag on Jeremy Sohan, no Romeo Langford, no Devin Vassell. Jakob Poeltl's 11% owned. That seems like the only thing that we could really like set our watch to for the Spurs at this point. If you can get Keldon Johnson, he'd be the guy I would want. If these guys start getting ruled out, we might get more value, but I think the Spurs just look gross.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it depends on who ends up playing here, but if Keldon Johnson and Trey Jones are out, you're going to get a lot opening up because we already don't have Langford. You have a doubtful Jeremy Sohan in addition to Vassell being out. So it has the potential that, by the time we get to the deeper dive or live before lock, there's a lot to like here. But if Trey Jones is in, if Keldon's in, I think Jakob Poeltl's still pretty appealing. 6,100. He is pulling 11.5% ownership. So, again, in that double-digit range, comparable to Mason Plumlee, I think. Other than that, nobody's really pulling much ownership. Keldon Johnson at 6,900, we know has about a 30% usage rate without Devin Vassell, so you get a nice ceiling there, but more or less correctly priced. Where they really become interesting, though, is if those guys are out, because then, you're opening up more minutes for Richardson, Branham, Bates Diop. Not that they're necessarily exciting guys to get to, and their price tags have come up, but it would at least open up a little bit more.
Well, it's hard to dig into San Antonio too much at this point. The deeper dive will be helpful. We might have a little bit more information on San Antonio, but we're going to need to dig into Toronto, who is playing today without OG Anunoby. And I know that I am pretty regularly quick to be like, yo, we need to jam in the Toronto Raptors today. But by the way, we need to jam in the Toronto Raptors today. They're not getting the ownership they deserve.
I'm shocked you don't think the Raptors are getting the ownership they deserve. I have not heard you say that on the show before.
Gary Trent is at 21%, but single digits to Siakam, Barnes, Achua, Boucher. You get Van Vliet right over the 10 spot. They played 8 guys on Sunday. One of them just happened to be Thad Young now and not Christian Koloko, who it was on Friday. But if these guys are just going to play an 8-man rotation in a matchup against a terrible San Antonio team, I look at Toronto as like a bargain, maybe not bargain is the right word, but like a step down version of the Miami Heat. Like, this is just going to be a bunch of guys playing a shit ton of minutes in a fantastic spot.
Yeah, I'm with you. 9,100 for Van Vliet. I mean, that is basically a 10% price bump from where we last saw him. He is playing better from earlier in the year. I don't know if he was banged up earlier in the year. I don't know if Siakam's banged up now, but we have seen Siakam's point per minute production come down over the last month. We've seen his rates come down across the board, and as a result, you're seeing increased rates for Van Vliet. So that's not a knock on Siakam. If you want to get to him against San Antonio, that's perfectly fine as well. But on DraftKings, he is center only, which makes it a little bit more difficult. But for Van Vliet at 9,100, I think now he's just like correctly priced, whereas this was somebody that you were getting at 35% ownership when he was 8,300. So I still like getting to Van Vliet. Gary Trent at 6,100, assuming he's playing mid-30s, is going to look good with shooting guard, small forward eligibility. Scotty Barnes is up to 8K. Like, that's a tough price tag to pay, but he's also not getting much ownership. He's in a great spot. So I kind of get it. Like, I don't really love paying 8K for Scotty Barnes. I don't love paying 4,400 for Boucher, even though, he does clearly have tournament upside here if they stick to that 8-man rotation. Precious Achiuwa at 5,800, pulling 8% ownership. Center only, he looks good, but there's a lot of centers in that range. So I understand why the ownership looks like it does, but I do think it also gives you the opportunity in tournaments to be getting to these guys in a really good spot. And, with the exception of Trent, because he's pulling 22%, and not to say that Trent's a bad play, but with the exception of him, all of these guys are ways that you can just naturally lower the total ownership of your lineup without really sacrificing upside. So I think that the pricing does account for the matchup, and that's why you're not getting a ton of ownership. But it's just very likely that somebody in this game, one of these main guys on Toronto, puts up a score where you just say, oh yeah, his price tag did not matter. It didn't matter if he was 10% less expensive, 10% more expensive. Doesn't matter. He destroyed his salary.
That's how I feel. It's the perfect team outside of Gary Trent to take some other chalky guy and flip flop them. Would you rather have Precious Achiuwa or Mason Plumlee today? Those guys are going to play about the same minutes.
Ownership agnostic, Plumlee.
Ownership not agnostic.
Don't care. I think they're similar.
I've got Achiuwa behind him by 0.2 of a point, and he's saving $800. So my answer, even with ownership, is Precious Achiuwa. But I also love Toronto every single day, so nobody should be surprised by any of this. Anything else for the Raptors?
Nope.
We're running this matchup back. Sacramento Kings, 7.5-point favorites in Houston, 241 total. Kings look to be at full strength. They are getting Kessler Edwards. I don't know if he's available for this one. Probably doesn't matter at all, but he's going to get some playing time for Sacramento. They are getting no ownership because we just can't get these guys to be at value prices. They so consistently play the same shit every single day that everybody's just priced where they should be. So I want to get Sacramento against Houston. I just don't know how you do it. It's
kind of the same argument we just made for the Toronto guys, in that there's a pretty good chance in this matchup, at least one, of Sabonis, Fox, Herter, Barnes, Murray just puts up a score where you're just like, yep, cool. Didn't matter if he was 5,400, 6K, 6,200. Didn't matter if Sabonis was 9K or 11K. But you just can't really single out which one that's going to be, because from a median, from a projection standpoint, they all just look correctly priced. It's tough to pay 10-3 for a center-only Sabonis when you have $8,900 Bam playing against Indiana without, half his team. So it's just difficult to single out any of these guys and get to them in volume. But it is still a great spot. There is still plenty of upside on these guys, even at what are correct price tags. So again, it's just a team where there's not one guy I'm singling out. It's a good way to be contrarian in tournaments. That's kind of the nice thing about these 9-game slates, larger slates. You don't have to go to like shitty plays and hope to get lucky to differentiate your tournament lineup. You can go to really good players that are just more correctly priced than others and say like, oh, cool, I'm being different today by playing Domantas Sabonis against Houston, or I'm being different by playing De'Aaron Fox against the Rockets. Like, those are very good ways to go within individual lineups. You're just not, if you think of your lineups as a portfolio, you're not trying to just jam in a ton of like Domantas Sabonis is the biggest edge on the slate, because he's not. But within a given lineup, it makes a ton of sense. And that's the same for all of the starters.
I got to hit one more chat comment here, which I don't think is explaining what they think they're explaining. More teams were good on average during Jordan's era as well. Now, I don't agree with that at all, but let's also be clear here that like it's basically the same all the time. There's obviously more talent in the league now, but either way, if this era is full of top-heavy conferences, then that's a better message for LeBron than MJ. Not every team makes the playoffs. If it's top-heavy, you're just having way more difficult paths through the playoffs than if it were more balanced. Like, if there's more average teams, the playoffs are harder playing really good teams for 7-game series than it is to just play more average teams. If the whole league got to make the playoffs, that would be a different thing. But if you're concentrating to the top and you're admitting that the top is more concentrated now, that's harder. That's harder.
Yeah, which goes back to, like, I don't even remember who had said it, but somebody, it goes back to just how the rings argument is so dumb. And Andy Lochter made a really good point on Twitter earlier, and it's saying the same thing. And he's in the MJ is the greatest of all time camp. But his point was basically like how wild it is to think about how if Kevin Durant just makes different decisions throughout the course of his career, LeBron James is viewed differently. Like, if Kevin Durant doesn't go to Golden State, LeBron might have more rings than Jordan at this point. And from a logic standpoint, that should cue up to you that it invalidates the ring argument that Kevin Durant going somewhere or not going somewhere to join Steph Curry makes LeBron James better or worse. That makes no sense.
Josh has never given Jordan his credit. I agree. I saw the Glockner tweet earlier today. Completely agree. I think Michael Jordan is incredible. He was everything to me as a child growing up. I liked the Bulls. The second three-peat is ingrained in my brain. I saw it all as a formative child. I thought Jordan was everything. Everything. I'm going to be 38 years old on Sunday. I saw it happen.
So I pretty much missed all of his prime, but I started watching basketball because of Michael Jordan in that he joined the Wizards when I was like 11.
I have a flashbulb memory of the Jordan under layup against the Lakers as like a 6-year-old kid in our living room at our apartment. Like I can still flashbulb see this. I'm not anti Michael Jordan. I'm just pro LeBron James.
Right. That's where I am too. Like
I shot 1,000 million shots at the hoop behind my house doing the Jordan final shot over Brian Russell. Over and over and over and over and over again. This is a dude that I emulated doing everything. I get it. Trust me.
Somebody said Adam missed MJ's prime, so it makes sense. I'm not basing any of this on the eye test, though. Like, This isn't like, oh, yeah, I think LeBron James looks better than MJ did. Like, and it's not anti-MJ for me either. If I say anti-MJ stuff, it's just to rile people up. Like,
yes,
when I compare him to DeMar DeRozan. But as far as like, actual takes, I think MJ was great. I think to me, it's just a time thing. Like I said, this isn't anti-Jordan for me. It's LeBron has the advantage of being 20, 30, whatever he is years younger. Like I would be shocked if when I'm 50 something, LeBron James isn't the second best player to ever play, in my opinion.
Yeah. We're on the same page for what we're talking about here. I just look at someone that's played so much basketball. He's at basically 54,000 minutes. Jordan is at 41,000. He's played 13,000 more regular season minutes than Michael Jordan. He played 4,000 more playoff minutes than Michael Jordan. And you got to figure LeBron's playing what? 2-3 more seasons at this point in time. He's a no doubt about it all NBA player in this year, turning 38. Like it's ludicrous. He's going to hang so many ridiculous numbers. It's insane. And we're going to just boil it all down to like, well, he lost a couple finals that he was supposed to lose.
Right. I do think the biggest thing though is like, it's one thing to like just be positive about both guys. If you think Jordan's better, like I think you're wrong, but it is what it is. Like if you're, what I don't get is the people that like root against LeBron or try and like take away from LeBron because they like Jordan so much. Like enjoy getting to watch one of, if you don't think he's the best, easily one of the best players to ever play the game. Like, and if you're old enough to have gotten to watch Jordan's prime, like, cool, that was probably awesome too. Like that to me, where it really sucks is when people are just like, can't enjoy what's in front of them.
I don't think it happens the reverse way though. Like people that like LeBron, I think are like you and me, where we're just like, yes, Michael Jordan was awesome. But I think the people that are like, yo, it's Jordan, way more likely to be like, yo, LeBron's a fraud and he's not as good as Kobe.
Yeah. But I mean, there's also, it's tough because like, there's obviously nobody that saw Jordan's prime that isn't seeing LeBron's unless like, that is still talking. Whereas there's a lot of people that are seeing LeBron or saw LeBron's prime that didn't see Jordan. So like, it's kind of different, but there's like, so you have the nostalgia factor for Jordan that you don't have for LeBron. That makes people want to just tear down LeBron.
Yeah. I said it on the Process show this morning. I did like a little bit of a monologue. We're going to look back at that run that LeBron had of whatever 9 straight finals and then, Olympic teams, whatever, just never stopping playing basketball for the better part of 9 years as one of the more ridiculous accomplishments we saw in the NBA. Jordan had to stop twice. LeBron just went through that entire stretch and just kept going to the finals. That is ludicrous to me. Absolutely. Right. Like to wrap your head around it, to drag some of those teams to the finals, to get there just in general, insane. All right, Houston Rockets on the opposite side of the Sacramento Kings. This is fun to talk about. I really, really, really like the Houston Rockets today. I really liked the Houston Rockets on Monday. Didn't get me where I needed to be, even though you got 30 plus minutes out of all 5 starters. This should have been a much better game for Houston, and it didn't break that way. Sacramento's defense isn't very good. There's a 240 total on this one. We've got 5% ownership coming to Şengün, 5 to Jabari Smith, two guys I was very heavy on Monday that I'm also very heavy on again today. I'd like to go to Jalen Green, who's the only guy in double-digit ownership. I love most of Houston, in particular Şengün, Green, and Jabari Smith. I feel like you're going to be at least a little bit more pessimistic than me, but I feel like you got to like this spot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you don't, because it's just a really good spot. 8,400 for Şengün at 5% ownership. I mean, that's a really, really favorable price tag here. He played 36 minutes in a game that was decided by 20 points. Like, he didn't even play the final 2.5 minutes of that game. Obviously, you're not expecting 38 minutes like ever, but that's probably what he would have played if that game ends up being competitive. As long as he avoids foul trouble, you're getting 33, 34 minutes from him on a consistent basis at this point. He gets a bump without Kevin Porter Jr. out, even though Jalen Green is back, you still get a bump for Şengün. The 5% just seems too low to me. I like $6,800 Jalen Green. That is a cheap price tag for somebody that's just going to come out and have a 31 to 32% usage rate without Kevin Porter Jr. and play 33 or 34 minutes, if not more. Those two guys look really, really good to me. And then I think from a tournament standpoint, mixing in a $5,200 Jabari Smith, mixing in a $5,500 KJ Martin, those both make sense. Jae'Sean Tate, I keep wanting him to play more minutes, but he's kind of just locked into that 20 to 22 minute role. So, at 3,900, point guard, small forward, maybe going a little bit under owned in the sense that he's 3% owned with a 6% or 7% chance of being optimal. But if you play him, you're kind of just hoping to run into that game where he finally plays 24, 25 minutes. But from Green and Şengün are the guys I really want to get to. Smith would be third, KJ Martin 4. And then I think, it's kind of, if you happen in 150 lineups to land on some Tate or Gordon, whatever.
I have so much of Şengün, Green, and Jabari Smith. It's crazy. It's the same thing I did on
I probably
Monday.
will too. If the ownership stays this low, I'll be there with you.
Okay, good. Makes me feel a little bit better. At least Green got to 12. And Şengün is a product of that similar price range to Bam scenario, but I just like getting to, I think one of those two guys has a day that matters. And I'm trying to corner the market on both of them, just from a math perspective. So give me all the Houston. Anything else here for the Rockets?
Nope.
All right, we go to Minnesota. 3.5 point dogs in Utah, 232 total. I don't think that there's anything that we could really say right now for Minnesota. They're on a back-to-back. We had no Kyle Anderson yesterday. They got absolutely destroyed. Nikola Jokic was putting up a stat line as if he were playing against middle school kids, just rebounding every shot, assists across the board, scoring whenever he needed to. That said, I don't know if Rudy Gobert is going to be able to play today on this back-to-back. He's played 26 minutes, 18, and then 19. Obviously, didn't play quite a bit yesterday because they were getting destroyed. So maybe that helps him for today, but he's certainly not healthy as of right now. We don't know the status of Kyle Anderson, who was probably the best play on the Wolves for today. I think this is just one that we've got to kick down the road, which we also might not have this information.
Yeah. The fact that the way they handled yesterday makes me think that my initial thought based on how they handled yesterday was that, maybe we get Gobert today because he did barely have to play yesterday. It made me think that there's a good chance Kyle Anderson's not coming back. The fact that they gave Naz Reid no minutes in the second half made me think that they think they're gonna have to rely on him today. Maybe that's for Gobert also, but I think the most likely case is that Minnesota is at least somewhat shorthanded, whether that is just Gobert out, just Anderson out, both of them out. I don't know. I'd be surprised if they are at full strength here. So I think you're going to get good plays here. If we assume everybody in, Gobert looks good at 6,700. Russell's fine at 7,300. I think Edwards is pretty tough to get to at 9,900. If you take Anderson out and you start Naz Reid, he looks good. He doesn't look the same level of good as he does if he is starting in place of Rudy Gobert, but he looks fine. McDaniels would look better. Taurean Prince would look okay at 3,300. If Gobert is out and Reid is starting, then it's back to just jam Naz Reid in as many lineups as you can at 4,700, because the big reason that you have that difference where it's like, okay, well, he's good if he's starting for Anderson, he's great if he's starting for Gobert, is just the minutes that are available. If Gobert is in, it's less likely that the plan, barring foul trouble, is like mid-30s in minutes for Reed, where we know that you're not projecting him for mid-30s because he does foul a lot. But the plan, if things go according to script, is if Reed is playing for Gobert, he's playing 34 to 36 minutes if he avoids fouls.
So happy about the Naz Reid experience yesterday. That was really fun. I didn't even know the Wolves could play so many guys. They played.
Yeah.
They played 14 dudes yesterday.
Yeah, so I needed Reed not to come back in once they subbed him out in the third. And I was sitting there, I'm like, man, I don't know if they have enough guys unless they're really just going to run like these 5 the rest of the game. I don't know if they have enough for him not to come back. So I pulled it up. I'm like, oh, they have an 8-man rotation, basically.
It's Wendell Moore got a ton of run. Bryn Forbes got dusted off. Josh Minot played 17.
They didn't even give Jalen Noel garbage time minutes.
Yeah, they had a whole other team of garbage here. Keep your eye on the deeper dive and live before lock. Hopefully we get some of this news. It's going to be a complicating factor. We then go to Utah, where Mike Conley, Kelly Olynyk, and Walker Kessler are all about 15% owned for right now. It's a decent spot against Minnesota. It could look even better shortly. Jared Vanderbilt is questionable. He missed Monday's game.
I assume he's not playing.
I would imagine as well. We shall see. I mean, it's, the likely scenario here is that he's going to be out the door by tomorrow. But I think you and I are going to be on the same page here. $4,700 power forward center Kelly Olynyk, come on down.
Yep. A more reasonable price tag now than we had the other day where he was 41% owned, or not, when he was 4,100. I don't know. I was gonna say, I don't know what his ownership was in like large field stuff. I know he was like 60 to 70% owned in high stakes single entry. So that was a spot where if his ownership ended up being where we had projected for large field, you saw a big discrepancy in what like good players were doing and what large field players were doing. But at 4,700, you still expect him to play around 27, 28 minutes. He's averaged about 28 as a starter so far this year. He got 28 again last game. Does, get in foul trouble occasionally, but expecting 27, 28 minutes is going to make him look like a good power forward option at 4,700. Kessler is another high upside center at 5,700. You could argue that he looks marginally better if Vanderbilt is out. But you still only got 27 minutes from him last game. He actually didn't close. They went with Olynyk at the 5. I think expecting, 26 to 28 minutes from Kessler one way or the other is the correct way to approach it. Just makes him look like another, good option in that range. Then you get to Conley, Clarkson, Markkanen, I think all secondary options that, look reasonably good. Colin Sexton at 3,800 was in the closing lineup over Kessler. He got to 25 minutes. Certainly a risky play, but if you get 24 minutes or so from Sexton, he's going to start to look decent at 3,800.
I took the under on Jordan Clarkson's raw points today on PrizePicks, so let's hope that one hits. I don't have anything else here for Utah. It's just sort of like a bunch of guys that look okay. I'd like that Markkanen price tag to come back down to the 8s, but if he's going to keep playing 35 minutes a game, it's going to stay in the 9s. I got nothing else here for Utah.
Nope.
Closing it out with the dual late night hammers. The Dallas Mavericks are 7-point dogs in LA, taking on the Clippers. For Dallas, we're getting the debut of Kyrie Irving. Unfortunately for us, Luka Doncic is out, which is just so much less fun for this opportunity. No Maxi Kleba, no Davis Bertans. Markieff Morris, I guess, is available. Whether or not he's playing, I have no idea. It actually seems like he probably is, but we'll see. Q tag on Frank Ntilikina. There's no ownership coming into Dallas right now, which is kind of wild. But Kyrie Irving has been priced up to 10,600. I don't think he looks all that good. There's one guy that I think is interesting that's not pulling any ownership. I'm not entirely sure if you'll see it too, but do you expect to get to Dallas?
Not particularly. Kyrie's already priced up. Clearly should have a big role here, but 10.6 is a pretty healthy price tag. Not a great spot. 107 implied total for the Mavs as well. Hardaway's salary came up, and now he's playing with Kyrie. There's nothing I really like. I'm interested who you're going to point to.
I think Jaden Hardy is interesting at 4,200 at no ownership. I don't have a great idea of how many minutes this dude can play, but he's going to soak up a bunch of usage. It's basically going to be Kyrie, Christian Wood, and Jaden Hardy as what I think are the 3 highest usage guys. You want to say that it's Tim Hardaway, I think that's fine too. I just think he's an interesting value play. I'm not saying that he's any sort of priority. I think Dallas actively looks bad, but I don't mind the idea of getting to Jaden Hardy for today.
Yeah, it's just with the price tag coming up, I think it makes it tough. Like even his rotation last game when you didn't have Kyrie doesn't inspire a ton of confidence. You know, he got hot in the fourth quarter, ended up getting to 26 minutes, but in the first half, he played basically like a 9-minute rotation. Then he closed the first half for 2 more minutes. So you got to 11. You know, he was basically tracking to play 22 minutes after the first half. 2 of those minutes were not necessarily by plan.
Fair.
Like I agree he's probably the bench scorer here. The $4,200 price tag just scares me a bit, especially because I think it's very likely that you get Christian Wood and Kyrie staggered as well. So it's not like you're getting Jaden Hardy out there just like running the second unit.
Agreed. Yeah, look, I don't want to sound like I'm trying to oversell Jaden Hardy. He was the only guy that I looked at like, okay, there's some upside there if he gets the minutes.
Yeah, I agree. I just don't think I'll end up getting to him.
Yeah, I think we're going to have much better value by the time we get to 7 o'clock that it's not going to matter. On the Clippers side, there is no ownership coming in here. John Wall is still out. We saw Luke Kennard get back into the rotation, and he was there even before Marcus Morris got the gate. Single-digit ownership, though, coming to this entire Clippers team. If I'm getting anywhere, it's probably either Paul George at 9,200. By all means, get to Kawhi. I just don't really see it. 4K Terrence Mann, maybe, but we saw big minutes out of Reggie Jackson here in the most recent game. Do you see anything for the Clippers?
Not particularly. $5,700 Zubats is playable. He's, as usual, not getting any ownership. There's a lot of guys that look very similar to him that are getting ownership. So reasonable tournament pivot, but again, like certainly not a priority. Price tag slowly coming up on Paul George to 9,200. 4,400 on Morris is probably the most appealing spot. Like he's cheap and playing big minutes, but I don't really like a lot here.
Neither do I. So let's close this one out then. Hit that like button. 570 viewers in here, 134 likes. Rousing discussion in chat today. You guys have been paying very close attention to everything that Adam and I have been saying. The Golden State Warriors are 3.5-point dogs in Portland, 234 total. For Golden State, no Steph Curry, no Andre Iguodala. I don't know if you noticed this on Monday, because somewhere I missed it. Kevon Looney didn't start. They started Kuminga.
Yeah, I was aware. I played Kuminga.
Yeah, I missed that one, I guess, on Monday. Wasn't really going to change too much for me, but Jonathan Kuminga is the most owned guy, second most owned guy on Golden State today at 24%. The key piece here, and I think it's pretty easy to say, you got to get to Jordan Poole at 7,100. Point guard, shooting guard eligible, 34% owned. I have no idea why he's still just 7,100. We said it the last time out. I'm going to say it again. He's going to be 8K shortly. And I don't want to say like take advantage now, but like he's going to get to a point where he's way less interesting. At 7,100, I wouldn't mind having him everywhere.
Yeah, same boat. I mean, it's not the $6,200 price tag. Obviously, there's a little bit more risk, but the guy's averaging 35 to 36 minutes in the games he's played with Clay and without Curry this year. He's got like a 36% usage rate in those games. Fine matchup. One of the more appealing games in general that we've talked about today. I have no issue getting the Pool. I'd expect to have him pretty much everywhere.
Yep. Talk to me about Kuminga, though. Assuming he starts. If this was a Nurkic game, I think that we might have gotten Kevon Looney, but I assume they're going to go back to the Draymond lineup. I would rather them start Looney. I don't know what they're doing. I don't agree with the starting lineup from Steve Kerr, but Kuminga for 3,800 certainly looks like a pretty nice value.
Yeah, played 23 minutes last game. You certainly could get more, but I think expecting him to be in that 22 to 24 minute range makes sense. At 3,800, that's enough to get him into lineups, especially, as a power forward. Looney played 22 minutes as well, but with him being center only on DraftKings, it becomes more difficult to get there for sure. Clay and Wiggins both look fine. Their price tags have come up a bit as well. Clay more so than Wiggins. So yeah, I mean, I think Poole's the priority. Poole's the guy I really feel good about getting to. Kuminga's a good value piece. Draymond, Wiggins, Clay, if you get to him, you get to him.
Yeah, I don't mind Wig at small forward, power forward, 6K. Nothing too crazy. To me, you can get to any of these other guys. I mean, Clay at 7,900 is probably at the upper bound of what I would want to get to. I think it's very clearly Poole and Kuminga. And then we close it out with another version, to me, of the Heat, of the Raptors, and that's going to be the Portland Trailblazers. They're favorites in this spot. It's a pace-up matchup against Golden State. You're getting about 10 to 15% ownership to Lillard, Simons, Grant, Hart, and Eubanks. I think Trendon Watford is a guy that you could take a shot at given the price and the eligibility. But when it comes to Portland, with no Nurkic, no Winslow, I want any one of the starters. I don't really have much of a preference. I think they all look really good.
Yeah, completely agree. Good matchup against Golden State. Again, one of the more appealing overall games that we've talked about so far. Dame coming in at 10-7. And we haven't talked about a lot of, opportunity costs as far as paying up either. You don't have much to pay up for on this slate. You don't have Jokic. You don't have Giannis. You don't have Luka. Lillard is actually the third highest priced guy on DraftKings behind Embiid and Tatum. I think he looks better than both of those guys, especially, in Embiid's case when you factor in the positions. But yeah, like getting to Lillard, you don't have nearly as much opportunity cost at the point guard position either as you normally do. So he's going to look really good. Simons playing a bunch of minutes at 6,800 looks fine. Grant 6,700. Hart sucks, but 5,800, for a small forward that's going to play 33, 34 minutes typically is pretty appealing. As far as the center position, I think you kind of project it like 26 for Eubanks, 22 for Watford. There are certainly games where it's going to be flipped and you're going to get Watford closing, but that's going to make both of them look like reasonable plays as well.
Just a good spot to get to all things Portland.
Agreed.
We done here?
Yeah.
Well, 9 games up, 9 games down. Thank you guys for being here. Make sure you hit that like button, folks. It's going to help us out tremendously. Tons of content coming up later today. My contenders videos are out. My PrizePicks video is out. Adam, you're going to have a Bet Pro video out shortly?
Yeah, NBA Notes article will be out first, and then the Bet Pro video.
There we go, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to PrizePicks. Thank you to LeBron James, the greatest basketball player in the history of basketball, for breaking the record for scoring more points than any basketball player has ever scored before. Surely that makes him the best ever. Good luck tonight.
He was the best ever without that.
Yes, he was. Well, considering he's been the highest scorer in the history of the NBA for years now, because we're going to add playoff stats, which they should do, he is the best. Go LeBron, the greatest of all time. Good luck tonight. We'll talk to you later.